Welcome to the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast, where it is never too early for fantasy football. My name is Jeff.
My name's Alex.
As always, thank you for downloading, listening, liking, and commenting on our podcast videos. Please join our community by subscribing to us on the socials. Our handle on all platforms is at N2E Fantasy. We are also available on all major podcasting apps by searching N2E Fantasy. Alex, what do we have on today's show?
On this episode of the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast, we are recapping all Week 15 action. But first, we're going to cover a little bit of league news here. We've got some injuries and a bunch of quarterback changes. So, Jeff, why don't we start with your prince who has promised, Nick Chubb, going down again with an injury?
So, honestly, I believe this could be a blessing in disguise for Nick Chubb. I'm not sure his knee was 100%. So he now has a broken foot and is placed on IR and is out for the season. Having this additional time to recover and heal might be what Nick Chubb needs to hit the ground running next season. And I think that he's going to be a draftable piece. I think that he's going to be a starting running back for a team, at least leading a timeshare. But yeah, sad season overall for Nick Chubb. He actually got hurt and hit what looked like his best game of the season.
Yeah, I don't think his knee was 100% back yet. So recovery will probably be faster than the knee recovery, and he'll still have time to heal that knee up for next season, hopefully with a better left tackle, better quarterback situation. Hopefully everything improves for next year. So we'll see. But his time in the league as a top running back is coming short.
Yeah, I still think he'll be the lead of a timeshare next year. I don't know where. Maybe it'll be Baltimore. Maybe he'll replace Derrick Henry because I think Derrick Henry only signed a 1-year deal. Is that correct?
I believe so. But
so you never know.
Yeah. Let's get to another running back. Raiders running back Sincere McCormick appears to be out for the rest of the season with an ankle injury. He was a waiver wire darling, and it's already ended for him.
Yeah, I really like Sincere McCormick. He was kind of that guy that came in late in the season, but according to his social media, he said we'll see you next season, and that to me sounds like that the IR is the most likely spot for him. But we'll look for the official announcement in the next couple of days. But now the Raiders are going to have to look at Amir Abdullah actually look good in his absence this past week. I don't think Alexander Madison's it, but they'll probably look at him again. Also, I think Samir White's out for the year as well. So, yeah, the Raiders are pretty much shot at running back.
I think Sincere McCormick has a good chance to be the starting running back next season. Probably the one that you want to draft unless they address the position again this offseason. Madison right now is probably the between the tackles kind of runner for them, with Abdullah being the passing down back would be my guess. Because the way they used him, he looked much better running routes than he did actually running, in my opinion.
Yeah.
All right. We can move on to the next injury on the list here, and that is the Jaguars tight end Evan Ingram is now on the IR with a shoulder injury. I think that happened like right before game time, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, he had surgery already too.
Yeah, so his year is done, and we'll have to reevaluate him come the offseason to see if he's still worth it as a top tight end going forward.
So for me, for next year, he's still going to be a top 10 to 12 option, but next September he's 31 already, so it's not like he's a spring chicken.
It really depends on Trevor Lawrence and his target preference as well.
Well, and Brendan Strange is actually coming along too, so he may get replaced.
I think it's strange that he's doing so well. No, I'm just kidding. But that does it for the tight end position, though. We have a couple more running backs. The higher noteworthy injuries, Saints running back Alvin Kamara injured his groin on a passing play. That hurt me because I was getting good points from him up until that point. He might be shut down for the year with them probably not making the playoffs at this point. And he's getting older. They might be wanting to tear everything down this past offseason, try to get rid of Carr if they can, try to knock down their expensive salary cap bill that looks like has come due. I don't know how much wiggle room they have to rework it this offseason, but it's going to be pretty tough. Jeff, do you think it's Kendre Miller time?
So there are teams where I have Kamara and Miller, and they're still in the playoffs. So I have Kamara in my lineups as of right now, but I have the flexibility to swap out Miller on Monday night if Kamara is ruled out, because we don't know if he's going to play or not. It's probably better to shut him down and have him ready for next year. But as a fantasy player, I hope not. But if he is shut down, it will be Kendre Miller time. And I would love to see what he can do. I don't have much hope or faith given their receiving core and their quarterback right now, which I believe will be Spencer Rattler going forward. But yeah, we'll see what Miller has, at least. The other aspect of that is we don't know how much Jamal Williams will play into that as well.
I don't know how much left Jamal Williams has in the tank. Like, he already seemed close to done last year, so they really need to see what Miller has, because if Miller isn't good, then they need to take someone this offseason, because Kamara's time as being dominant is coming to an end, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, we've seen that he can do it when there's pieces around him earlier this year. Even when there aren't pieces around him, he still can do it. So, and they've re-signed him for the next 3 seasons. So, Kamara
Oh,
will be around.
he doesn't get rushing touchdowns. Even when Hill's not there, he's not getting rushing touchdowns. He's not as effective on the ground as he is on passing downs. So, I mean, I think they need to get probably a thumper or someone who is a better actual running back.
Yeah, so that doesn't speak well for Kendre Miller either, because I feel like he's not the thumper.
I mean, we'll see. He's going to
So,
have a game probably without Alvin Kamara this week to give it a go. But the Lions are now going to be without their 1B to their 1A running back situation here. Whatever. The committee with Montgomery and Gibbs is now down Montgomery. So he's having surgery on an MCL injury, out for the rest of the year. I would think he's back next year. I don't think it'll be that much of an issue next season, but for this playoff run, it's going to be pretty rough for the Lions. Dan Campbell has already said he doesn't want to put too much on Gibbs's plate, but at the same time, Gibbs is the only other bona fide running back they have at this moment. So I expect them to ride Gibbs the rest of the way.
yeah. Do you think that Gibbs breaks down? Do you think he can handle the full slate now?
I think my hope is, anyway, that they've managed his workload enough over the past 2 seasons that additional workload now won't be that too much for him, and he'll get some downtime when they have like a bye week, assuming they keep the #1 spot. So I think it should be okay. They obviously should be looking at bringing in high quality backups if they can find any, but I think it'll be okay. I think they'll shift to more passing plays or more motion plays, get a wide receiver to get a few runs in, would be my guess too.
Absolutely. I think Tim Patrick is looking pretty good right now.
Yeah, I like Tim Patrick. He's finally coming into his
Well,
own.
I think they're going to have to lean on the other weapons a little bit more too. So he just happens to fall under the other weapons category.
Yeah, he's had a couple good games of late, so I'm happy for him.
I expect Laporta to start to heat up now too, which I don't know if you remember, like we thought he had like a season-ending knee injury very early on. He didn't miss any games, but I wonder if that knee injury hampered him this season, and I wonder if he's going to go undervalued and underdrafted next season.
I hope so, because if that's the case, I'll definitely pick him up.
Yeah, just something to think about, because we know how bad Kelsey's knee injury affected him last year. He did that before week 1, so I just feel like knee injuries or in-season injuries that don't necessarily heal quickly, even if they're playing through it, could hamper their production and be an explanation.
All right. So let's burn through 3 futile quarterback changes right now, and then we can do the big one. So Browns look like they are moving on from Winston to DTR. Saints are going back to Rattler and benching Hayner. Giants are going back to Drew Lock again. So a little bit of flip-flopping with some of these teams. Which one of these three do you think makes the most impact fantasy-wise?
Well, we missed one more too. The Titans went from Levis to Mason Rudolph as well.
Yes.
I think Mason Rudolph has the biggest jump right now, and I think the real reason behind it is maturity. Because that's not something that Levis exhibits right now. Like, just some of his throws are just insane. And Mason Rudolph comes in and gives them stability, completions, and moves the ball with slower, but moves it and without the turnovers. So I think that's a big deal. I think DTR, we know what he is. I think Winston's the better option. And the reason why I think this is because I think that you can evaluate Judy, Moore, Tillman, Njoku. I think you can evaluate your offensive core better with Winston than you could with Dorian Thompson-Robinson. But we know what Winston is. Winston's a journeyman backup. We know what DTR is. We've seen him start before. I don't believe he's going to take a jump here. He's worse than Winston, so I don't believe he's a journeyman or a backup in this league. So I think the Browns are doing that particular move to see if DTR deserves a roster spot in 2025. But in my opinion, he doesn't deserve a spot. I just feel like that move is moot. But I know you have something to add to that, so go ahead.
So I would say out of those four quarterback situations, I think Rattler has the most upside, and he's
He
only
does.
been playing against playoff teams. So it makes sense that he would struggle against good teams. His best game, I think, was against the Commanders, who had the worst defense of the bunch. But it's still impressive that he's been getting tough starts where typically you want to start a rookie against an easier opponent. So I think we should give Rattler some credit. I don't think Drew Lock is any good at this stage in his career. So Giants to me are trying to look like they're doing something to try to win when I don't think they have any intention to win. The Browns, it's very tough because I agree Winston is the best fantasy option. He's a journeyman quarterback. My favorite quote about him is he keeps both teams in the game, which I think is hilarious, considering the 30 and 30 touchdown and interception feat that he pulled off his last year with the Bucks, and he probably was on his way to if he finished the year. But DTR might have some left to prove. He's still a young guy. We'll see. That's about it for there. Mason Rudolph was what he is. I don't think he's a starter in this league. Will Levis has more chance to be a starter than Mason Rudolph, but Mason Rudolph will make less mistakes. It is what it is.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I don't get excited for Drew Lock. I don't get excited for DTR. I really don't even get excited for Mason Rudolph. Rattler could be the starter next year. I mean, there's at least a 20% chance of that, I would say. I mean, Carr is still under contract, so that would have to be resolved first. But there's at least a decent percent chance that Rattler is the starter going into 2025 or competing for the starting job.
There was one draft nut that said Rattler was the best quarterback prospect last year on their board. I'm like, I don't know about that, but he is underrated.
Yeah, so he's the only one that really piques my interest because there is future ramifications of this. The other three, I don't think there's any future ramifications for.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, let's talk about the big quarterback change here. Atlanta benched Kirk Cousins for this next week, and we'll start rookie Michael Penix. So they gave up a huge contract with a lot of guarantees and a no trade clause to Kirk Cousins, and then behind his back, they plotted taking a quarterback and took Michael Penix 8th overall. What do we make of this change at this point? I know Kirk Cousins hasn't been good, but what do we think of this situation?
I think Atlanta's looking for a spark, and I hope they get it. I don't know if they will. This is a rookie quarterback entering. I know an older rookie quarterback. How old is Michael Penix? 24. So I hope Kirk Cousins supports him at least through the rest of the year because that'll look really well on Kirk here. But I think the bigger question becomes is, so there's a lot of different avenues here that could happen. Michael Penix could take off, and then they have to figure out what they're going to do with Kirk Cousins. Michael Penix could be mid, and then they still have to figure out what they're going to do with Kirk Cousins and Michael Penix next year, or he could be just as bad as Kirk Cousins, and they're trying to figure out how they get back to Kirk Cousins and restore his confidence. But if he's just as bad as Kirk Cousins was, then that, to me, falls on the coaching staff and the talent around them. If he's mid, so like a slight improvement on Kirk Cousins, then I think you got to figure a way to get Michael Penix into the lineup next year. But that lends the question of what do you do with Kirk Cousins, because he's got a full no trade clause.
So if Michael Penix plays reasonably well the last few games of the year, and he looks like you want to start him going forward next year, I think you try to work something out with Kirk Cousins to send him where he wants to go, and I think you eat a bunch of his contract and don't get much out of trading him, but you can get something. Otherwise, you might get forced into cutting him and eating all of the cap next year, which I think if they ate it all at one time, I think it's 90 million, if I remember correctly, of a cap hit. So that is quite a lot, but they only suffer through it for one season, I think. So, I mean, those are really the options that they have. There's a good chance that Penix doesn't look that great or looks mediocre, and Kirk Cousins, after having time to heal, granted he's older now, so it's tougher to heal when you're old, like us. There may be a chance that they want to play him going into next year because Kirk Cousins could be better next year, potentially. So there's a lot of variables. Right now, it's looking like moving on from Kirk Cousins and trying to roll with Penix for next year.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm interested to see how he plays. That'll be probably one of the more interesting games for Week 16.
All right, let's go through our recaps, and we'll just do it fairly briefly. We won't be as long-winded as normal, guys. So let's just power through the Thursday night matchup between the Rams and the Niners. I went Rams on this one. You went 49ers. It probably could have gone either way because it was an ugly 12-6 victory for the Rams. I pulled it out this week, but man, did it feel awful this week. Cooper Kupp is officially dead to me. He caught 0 catches, looked like a decoy the entire game. Didn't look like he was a real focal point of the offense. So I don't know if he's hurt and they wanted to disguise it, but I want nothing to do with him next year. Debo, I want nothing to do with him either. He keeps complaining and talking about how great a receiver he is and had a horrible drop in this one. And I just can't trust either of these guys going forward. But it was a big night for Kyron Williams and Puka Nacua for the Rams. Wasn't really a good night for anyone on the 49ers. The only one that had an okay night was maybe Kittle, but he had no touchdown to cap it off. So, Jeff, what did you make of this matchup?
No, I agree with you, and I think this was just the game script got away from Cooper Kupp. So I do wonder if in Week 16 that the Rams will overcompensate the other way for this, because as we know, fantasy players can be a little crazy and go after the players that didn't produce for them in the first round of the playoffs. So, but it was an ugly one. 12-6 is just gross. I think it was all field goals too.
Yep, all field goals. Some said they didn't have enough field goals, but not
Yeah.
me. I said they needed the touchdown at least.
Yeah. But I think Debo complaining and then dropping that ball, that could have easily been a touchdown and that could have swung this whole game, is the perfect icing on the cake of Debo's 2024. Like, I think that's it. I know we have league mates that are trying to sell him as a top 20 wide receiver to us still, but for me, he's going to be outside my top 40 next year. Like, I don't see how I get him in the top 40.
Yeah. A disappointing season, in my opinion, for both of these teams so far, but it looks like the Rams might sneak out a playoff spot.
Yeah. And Alex, I'll be fully transparent with you. As week 15 ended, I started to get the itch to look forward to 2025 a little bit. I know I still have 7 fantasy teams alive, so it's not like I'm failing at fantasy at all, but I'm getting that itch to get the projections done and in, which I will in mid-January, but it's just something that's starting right now. And I already have that itch to look towards 2025, and Devo is a guy that I'm going to be recommending people to stay far away from because I believe his best days are behind him.
Well, I'm starting to look at a lot of potential rookies and starting to watch game film and stuff like that on them. So I'm excited for that too.
So as you can see, Alex is looking at rookies. I'm looking at current players. Like we have it all covered for next year for everybody that's listening right now. But the next game here is the Ravens at the Giants. And Alex, Lamar Jackson threw for 5 touchdowns in this game to keep pace in the MVP race. And the Ravens ended up winning 35-14. But that's only part of the story. The Giants are on their 4th quarterback as Tim Boyle was forced to play in this game after Tommy DeVito was knocked out of this game. So now they've used Daniel Jones, Tommy DeVito, Drew Lock, Tim Boyle, like just another lackluster quarterback. The only good side of all that is that Neighbors still eats, even with the turnstile at quarterback. So that's that. He's still going to continue to chirp. He needs a guy that's going to consistently get him the ball and consistently play with him each week. Like, he doesn't even have that. Like,
Yeah.
And then if you look at the Ravens side, Derrick Henry, first week of the fantasy playoffs, puts up a lackluster first round performance for folks. But that's because Lamar threw for the 5 touchdowns. I'm very convinced of that. Also, I think in bad matchups right now, I think the Ravens are trying to conserve Derrick Henry for later games. I don't know if you remember, like the Titans would bench Derrick Henry in games that didn't matter down the stretch and then play him in that last game against like the Jaguars for the division and win the division that way. It just feels a little bit like that, but I know they want Derrick Henry to be completely fresh for January, and that's what it's seeming like. And then I know they're having their problems with Deontay Johnson. He's out for this entire week. They've agreed for him to be excused from all team activities. He's not suspended, so he's getting paid just to be away from the team, which I anticipate to be the way for the rest of the year. But Bateman does show up for 3 for 80 and 2 touchdowns without like a Deontay Johnson. Flowers is struggling right now, and Tez Walker got his first touchdown as a pro, if I'm not mistaken.
A first catch, first touchdown.
Hey, that's like a dream sequence.
Well, I don't know if it's first catch for sure, but yes, first catch. He's been in 6 games and it's his first catch. But I don't know, Jeff. I don't like the situation with Baltimore. I feel like they should have been running the ball more in this matchup. I wanted Ali, maybe Mitchell, and Hill to carry the ball a little bit more. Felt like they should have been able to run on the Giants and just ground this game to a pulp instead of forcing Lamar to get all the points. I feel like they're trying to get him the MVP. And I think when they do that kind of stuff, it hurts the team in the long run. Just like last year, Lamar tried to prove that he could win a game in the playoffs, and they only passed and they didn't run, and they ended up getting beat up in the playoffs. So I don't like it. I wish it was more of a Derrick Henry game and running back game in general. I don't like Rashad Bateman getting 2 of the touchdowns, but it is what it is. I feel bad for the Giants where they are now, but at least they have a couple Super Bowls in their history, so that's something.
Absolutely. But honestly, like Lamar already has 2 MVPs, and I feel like the only trophy he should be chasing is a Lombardi trophy.
I don't think that he necessarily deserved both of those MVPs previously because I don't think his seasons were that spectacular, if I remember correctly. This season is better than either of those seasons, but I don't think that he should get it this year because I think Josh Allen has been better, in my opinion. Anyway, someone else who's been phenomenally good, but their team isn't. Joe Burrow and the Bengals got a win over the Titans. We both picked this one as well. We both got this correct. So I'm 3 of 3. You're 2 out of 3 so far. Burrow had kind of a up and down game this week. Had a couple turnovers, but overall, the Bengals were just much better than the Titans and ended up outlasting them, although the Titans threatened for a bit. Rudolph came in and replaced Levis, who had a very high turnover prone game here. I think, 3 interceptions on the day. Not good for Burrow. Mason Rudolph also had an interception himself. Titans just aren't good. They're going to probably pick in the top 5 in this
Uh,
upcoming draft. Jeff,
agreed.
what were your takeaways this week?
So Pollard looked good on the ground and he scored. Tajay Spears looked good in the receiving game, so that was interesting. Chase Brown, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins all produced as well in this game, and Chase Brown with the score, of course. But it'll be really interesting to see what the Bengals do with their offense in 2025. I don't know if Chase and Higgins will be on this team in 2025. I assume at least Chase, but Chase did toy with a holdout last year. So are we going to get to that point eventually where he does hold out and he stops threatening?
They put themselves in the situation where he could.
Yeah, they've just been delaying for so long, and it makes no sense. All they do end up doing to themselves is end up paying more money.
Yep,
So
they're
to
following
me,
the
that
Jerry
doesn't make
Jones
sense.
method. Yep.
Yeah, I mean that's too bad, so sad. But we both, as you said, we both picked Cincinnati. You've got them all right so far. Alex, do you have the next one right? The Cowboys at the Panthers. We both picked
No.
Carolina, and we both got it wrong.
Yep.
So this is where your undefeated streak ends. The Panthers were unable to keep the momentum going. They lose 30-14. Cooper Rush, Rico Dowdle, and CeeDee Lamb lead the Cowboys, and they actually looked pretty good in this game. All three of them. And then the one lone bright spot for the Panthers was Coker. He scored a long passing receiving touchdown. It was the lone passing touchdown for the Panthers. But other than that, not very many bright spots for Carolina.
Even Chuba Hubbard didn't really have that good of a game this week. It was kind of a surprise that the Cowboys decided to show life at this point, but not much we can do about that. So we both got this wrong. Then we can move on to the next matchup. The Chiefs at the Browns. We both picked Kansas City. We both got it correct. Kansas City won 21-7, although Mahomes got injured late in the game, may miss time with the injured ankle, which they're going to the playoffs probably regardless, so they might as well rest him if they need to. This is the game that got Winston benched for DTR. Hunt surprisingly outperformed Pacheco in this one. That could just be Pacheco still getting healthy. But Jerome Ford had a good game for Cleveland. Jerry Jeudy had a good game with 108 yards off of 11 receptions. It's pretty much it for both teams. Chiefs got an ugly win, but really no fantasy relevance this week. You're on mute.
Yeah, so do you think Mahomes will play next week?
I think if they're smart, they would probably rest him until he's ready to go. I'd rather have him healthy for playoffs than get a 16-win season.
And you're not saying that because they're playing the Texans next week?
No, but I might actually give the Texans a win now if he's out. But I think the way that they've been winning is less to do with Mahomes and more to do with their defense. So I don't know how much impact it will actually have if they rest him. But I do know it'll be very important come playoffs for Mahomes to be closer to 100%.
Absolutely. So Jerry Jeudy produced in this game. Do you believe that continues with DTR?
It's hard for me to want to play any Browns skill position player with DTR in. Like, I need to see DTR play. I feel like if you have Judy, if you don't have 3 better options, you probably have to play him anyway.
So the Chiefs' ground game also isn't doing so well right now. Pacheco and Hunt are splitting 50-50, and Mahomes, if he does play, you would expect him to have a lack of mobility. What a smart team would just blitz, would run blitz a good chunk of the time next time, because without mobility, he's not going to be able to get out of the way of the blitzes. Plus, it'll stuff the run, so you're making him make quick decisions with the football. Then I don't know where you could start Pacheco or Hunt in a fantasy lineup right now in the playoffs.
Yeah, I maybe flex options at this point until one of them emerges as the de facto guy. All right. Well, we just mentioned the Texans, and we have the Dolphins at the Houston Texans. It's a game that earlier on in the year I would have thought Miami had a chance in, but I picked the Texans. You picked Miami. Texans pulled it out 20-12. Woo!
Thanks to turnover
Uh,
Tua.
Yeah, Tua did not play well. Like, I don't ever want Tua to throw 40 times, and he threw 3 interceptions directly to Texans players because of anticipation throws. And I think that, to me, the Dolphins should be looking at moving on from Tua as soon as reasonably possible. I don't think he's that great of a quarterback. I think he has a pop gun arm. He doesn't have any vertical strength. I think he's a limiting factor to this offense, and it's sad that they have worse quarterback situations behind him.
Bring in
Texans,
Anthony Richardson, right? With a better arm.
I mean, he's used to playing in Florida. Imagine what he can do with Mike McDaniels. Well, the Dolphins'
So,
saving grace for them is they were able to shut down Joe Mixon, who got a little banged up in this one, but it looks like he's fine, according to D'Amico Ryans for next week. And outside of that, I mean, Nico Collins had 2 short touchdowns, but no one on the Texans got a lot of yards. So, really bad fantasy week for both teams.
yeah, the Texans passing game doesn't look right now. And maybe you could chalk that up to Mixon not being able to run after that illegal tackle. It was an illegal tackle. I know people online are complaining about them not calling it in the moment, but the NFL does have instruction that unless it's like very clear hip drop tackle in the moment to the referee, not to call it in the game, and they'll take care of it with fines and suspensions after. So I know that there was some upset to that, but it's very clear with the NFL that they would rather a penalty not be called on a play that was borderline, and they'll take care of it afterwards.
Yeah, but I'm just glad he's okay for now. This
That's the
game
second one
just
this year.
showcased. Yeah, this game just showcased the futility of the running game situation when he's not out there or not effective. Texans have a lot to improve, and it's a little late in the year for them to fix things. So I don't know how it's going to go. I suspect an early out playoffs at this point.
Yeah, I feel like they're one and done. I feel like both of these teams should have been playoff teams, and it's very disappointing.
Yeah. All right. 2 teams that might have been playoff teams as well. The Jets at Jaguars. Jeff, we both picked the Jets. We both ended up being correct. They won 32-25. Looked like the Jaguars might have snuck one out at some point, but what do you make of this matchup?
You are frozen, sir.
I can see you. What do you make of this matchup?
So, on this particular matchup here, Aaron Rodgers turned back the clock and he leads the team with 289 yards passing, but also leads the team with 45 yards rushing. So he really turned back the clock in this matchup. But other than that, there wasn't too many bright spots. There was no ETN or big speed bright spots in this game. Other than Rodgers, Brian Thomas Jr. and Devontae Adams had 2 scores each, which, if anyone knows, going into a fantasy playoff, touchdowns are king. So that's like a 12-point without any yards type of situation for both of those wide receivers, and that's a huge day that they were able to perform for fantasy owners. But I can understand if there were fantasy owners out there that were cautious or skeptical about starting Brian Thomas Jr. this week. So I wasn't. I started him, but I can understand if there are people out there that were.
Would you have started him over Cooper Kupp?
Probably not. I would have tried to
What about
figure a way to get them both in the lineup, though.
What about Drake London?
Probably. Only because of the Kirk Cousins downward spiral. I had to start Drake London in a league, and I didn't like it.
He actually did okay, though. What about Jameson Williams?
I would have started Brian Thomas Jr. over Jameson Williams.
What
That wasn't even that hard for me.
about over Ramondre Stevenson?
Brian Thomas Jr., because I know that he has the touchdown potential. Stevenson's not even making my lineup in the league that I have him right now in. So
I know, and you wanted to extend his contract. I'm like, what are you
I did
talking about?
extend
He's
his
gonna
contract.
over Jefferson? I would have done Jefferson.
Not only did I want to, I did.
Anyway, Jets defense did nothing in this matchup, so they didn't even try to cover anybody. It felt like they're really bad without the previous coach.
Yeah,
Okay,
Salah.
yeah.
All right. Yeah, I don't really have much more to add to this matchup. Like, they're both non-playoff teams. They're not starting very many people on those teams, probably Devontae Adams and Brian Thomas Jr., and that's about it. Maybe Brees Hall, but Brees Hall wasn't even that good in this game, so he did score the rushing touchdown that saved his day. But the Commanders at the Saints is our next matchup, and this game came down to the last play of the game. So Spencer Rattler replaced Hayner, I believe is his name. We don't really even need to know his name because he's probably not going to be in the league very long. So, I mean, I'm just being honest here, but they lose on a last second missed 2-point attempt and they lose 19. Jaden Daniels was very solid in this game as he continues his bid for Rookie of the Year. He had 2 passing touchdowns, no interceptions. McLaurin does eat in this matchup with those 2 touchdowns. That connection between those two are very real, and I couldn't imagine what it would look like if they actually had a legitimate wide receiver opposite McLaurin. But yeah, we both picked Washington. We both got it right, but the Commanders are headed to the postseason now after this win, most likely, and the Saints are not. So, Alex, what did I miss in this matchup?
No, that's pretty much it. We'll see if the Commanders can continue on into the playoffs. I think that they're going to have a couple tough games at the end of the year in their own division. So we'll see if they can actually make the playoffs or not, but they were in fact the better team. We can move on, Jeff, to the Bills at the Lions, the one that we should have flipped on. We both picked Detroit because they were coming off 10 days rest and playing at home. The Bills were the better team. I think in both of our opinions, the Bills were a better team. They've got more plays that were called back on penalties that were impressive. Dan Campbell had the surprise onside kick that wasn't a surprise because you have to declare it ahead of time anyway. 10 minutes left in the game made no sense. And at this point, we're going to start calling him Dan Gamble because that's a more fitting name for him with the dumb decisions he makes sometimes. I appreciate him being aggressive, but once the NFL neutered the onside kick and didn't allow for surprises anymore, you can't do that. It made no sense. They did almost get back the onside kick at the end of the game. I don't know if they gave themselves enough time to do anything with it though, but it was close all the way throughout. 48-42, probably could have been 63-60 at some point. But great game for fantasy, great game for fans to watch, and these two might meet in the Super Bowl again.
Yeah, I'm glad you finally got to see what I see in Dan Campbell with his calls sometimes. Like, there's aggressive, and then there's just, man, you are in the heat of the moment, and that's not how this works because they lost by 6, which in theory, that was a 12-point swing because they gave Buffalo the ball back inside the 10. I believe that the guy returned it inside the 10, the onside kick. So that wasn't even helpful at all because Buffalo scored right away. And that was really the difference in the game is his one coaching gaff.
Unlike going for it on 4th and 1 or 4th and short, no matter where it's at on the field, going for an onside kick with the rule change, you have to declare it so they know it's coming. Like you can't surprise. Like if you could do a surprise onside kick, maybe it would work and maybe I would applaud you. But it's not a surprise anymore. You can't do a surprise.
No, you can't
It's
defend. You can't. No one can defend this call by him.
yeah.
And I'm sure the Lions will be fine, but they cannot make these calls in the postseason. They cannot.
I hope that this is the one egregious straw that's like you can't do any more of this. Like that's it. Like this is the one that you can't go further than this.
Yeah,
Like I'm fine being aggressive
yeah.
on
I know you
on
are.
4th and short, but It was dumb. It's the one I can't defend at all.
But this is what I've been telling you all along is I feel like he kept trying to stretch his aggressiveness out further and further. And he finally hit a point where you're not comfortable with anymore. So that was interesting to me that he actually hit that point. But we do need to talk about how Goff threw for 5 touchdowns, so that's great. He's still in the MVP race. St. Brown, first round fantasy stud, 14 catches, 193 yards, and a touchdown. But on the Buffalo side, Josh Allen and James Cook are beasts on the ground. They got 2 rushing touchdowns each. Josh Allen contributed 2 more passing touchdowns, and in my opinion, remains in the lead for MVP right now. I think Lamar, Goff all have a little bit of stake to that, but the guy is just unstoppable no matter the conditions. And the team really doesn't even need a punter, really, because of Josh Allen. Like, I just feel like he's able to drive the ball pretty easily to avoid even having to punt the ball very often. But here's one thing that McDermott did in this game that I actually liked, and I don't love McDermott all the time. They made Ty Johnson a priority in this game, and he ended up with 5 catches for 114 yards. And I feel like this was very game plan specific to Detroit. And teams hit a whole other level when you're able to like unlock a specific player for specific games. And Buffalo just did that with Ty Johnson here, in my opinion. Like, I don't think Ty Johnson will be a thing going forward. I think this was specific to Detroit's linebackers.
I think they spread the ball out a lot, and I think that he was the guy out of the backfield that they wanted to get the ball to as they exploited the injured secondary for Detroit. I think Detroit has probably 70% of their starters hurt and probably 40% of their backup players on defense hurt, which is amazing that they're able to still compete. That might prevent Detroit from winning a Super Bowl if they don't get some of those guys back in the playoffs. But
Yeah,
The Bills look to me like the best team in football this past week, outside obviously defense allowing 40 plus points.
2 weeks in a row. Yep.
Yep.
So McDermott's going to have to get that side of the football on lock, but at least you know Allen can keep up in track meets. They're not going to win every track meet, but at least you know you have a quarterback that can keep up.
All right, let's close out the rest of these matchups here. So we got Colts, Broncos, Patriots, Cardinals, Steelers, Eagles, Bucks, Chargers, Packers, Seahawks, Bears, Vikings, Falcons, Raiders. We can burn through some of these pretty quick. Jeff, why don't you why don't you break down the Colts, Broncos? Because I know you want to talk about Richardson.
Yeah, I think Richardson sunk the Colts playoff chances in this 31-13 loss. He had an under 50% completion percentage again. And I don't even think he's the most egregious part of this. I think that if you look at the game, Jonathan Taylor was even more egregious in this game because he dropped the ball at the half-yard line when he was scoring a touchdown. He celebrated early. It's been a theme this year, unfortunately. And when are coaches going to start punishing players for dropping the ball early? Because it's become a theme now. And secondly, like, why are players dropping the ball at all? Like, cool, you scored a touchdown. Act like you've been here before and carry the ball back to the bench. That would be my rule if I was the coach. Carry the ball back to the bench.
I don't get it. Like, he's old enough to have been in the league when some of these other guys have done the same thing. He should know better. I think he said after the game it should never have happened. Bo Nix had a tough game as well as Anthony Richardson. It's hard for me to hold it against Anthony Richardson when he played a top 3 defense in the Denver Broncos, but he does this all too often. I thought he played well enough in the first half. They were pretty competitive, and they were actually winning in the first half. It's the second half that Denver just took the game away. So I think there's still promise in Richardson. I still like Bo Nix. Bo Nix probably doesn't win the Rookie of the Year at this point, though. Holtz could be better next year. I would like to see some more improvement from Richardson. We haven't seen it other than one game this entire season from him.
No, I completely agree with that. So he had 0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions in the game. So that's not acceptable. Obviously, a rushing touchdown to add, which would save people if they did start him in fantasy playoffs, which I wouldn't recommend. But Bo Nix, you just mentioned that he probably is done for Rookie of the Year or pretty close to it. I would agree. I love that he threw for 3 touchdowns. It was only 130 yards, but he threw for 3 interceptions as well. So it's not like he's protecting the ball also. So just things to look at as we're getting closer to the end of the season here.
All right. Well, we can move on to the next matchup, and we both got that right, by the way.
On
So
to
we
the
both
next
picked
one.
Denver. Patriots at Cardinals. I went Arizona. You went New England. Arizona ended up winning 30-17. Kyler Murray, in my opinion, didn't really do that much. It was predominantly James Conner with 110 yards, 2 touchdowns, and Trey McBride, 9 catches, 87 yards. Not much offense going at all for Drake May. They looked so bad. They even showed on the owner's box Kraft's son telling him that the play calling sucks, like they did the lip reading thing, which seemed to be accurate. I think the Patriots need to fire their coaching staff and start over. I think Mayo is a disaster, and he's throwing his coaches under the bus. So I don't really appreciate that. On the Cardinals side, I think they're close to being a playoff team, but not quite there. I don't believe in Kyler Murray. I think he's a short yardage only kind of game manager. I don't think that he has what it takes to actually be successful in the league. And I think the league has caught up to him. But earlier on in his career, he could get away with stuff that he can't get away with anymore.
Yeah, I will agree with you on the Cardinals aspect of it, though. They made quite the improvement this year from last year. And I think Gannon's got them going in the right direction. I think not in 2025, but after 2025, they might have to ask themselves the question if Kyler Murray is the quarterback to get him over the hump. But I think you give him a shot here, and we can see what he can do. But I like Drake May. I like the tape that he's putting down. He needs that number 1 receiver that we've talked about over and over and over again. And once he gets that, we will see what he really looks like. And I think that he could grow really quickly in this league. So it's on New England to convince either a veteran receiver, like could you see like a DK Metcalf going there and being his one?
I think they're going to draft.
They're going to keep throwing draft capital at that?
Well, they're going to probably pick top 3, top 5. They're going to be in the perfect position for the top wide receiver, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So
I still think that's a dart throw versus grabbing a known commodity out there.
Well, a lot of known commodities don't want to go there because it's a high tax rate. And known commodities typically will only sacrifice their money when it comes to winning a championship. And that's not going to happen in New England. So New England's going to have to do it through the draft. That's just how I feel about that.
Yeah, I mean they could who were they trying to convince us last year to go there?
Hopkins was one.
Ayuk.
Ayuk. Yep. And Ayuk said no.
He's the one that told them no. But I picked New England in this matchup. I thought they would win, but they clearly lost by 2 scores. I do think Drake May is going to end up being the better quarterback between the two of them, but we will see. Time will tell there. I don't have very strong convictions on that one, but I could see his upward trajectory being better than what Kyler Murray's was.
Yep. I like Drake May a lot. I like Bo Nix a lot. So I'm looking forward to watching them grow. I like Jaden Daniels fine. I just think he's gonna get one hit too many and be broken because he's so thin. But we can move on to the Pennsylvania Showdown. The Steelers at the Eagles. You went Steelers. I went Eagles. And without Pickens there, Pittsburgh's offense looked pretty inept. The Eagles' defensive line looks really, really good, especially against the run. Najee Harris wasn't able to do anything. They abandoned the run, weren't able to get that many offensive plays going. So the Eagles won this pretty handedly. Eagles also did it through their wide receivers, A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, rather than through Saquon. So Saquon had a little bit of a down week for the running back position. And he, as a running back, was already on the outside looking in on the MVP conversation after this week. He has fallen further behind. So it's primarily between the quarterbacks at this point.
Yeah, Barkley and Harris had down performances in the fantasy playoff week 1. But the bigger news there is that Harris's fumble could cost him playing time going forward.
It won't.
I hope not, but it could. It was pretty much what iced the game here. I hope not, because I think that he's their best shot. But they definitely need George Pickens back as soon as possible, because without him, this offense is not the same. Not surprisingly, but surprisingly at the same time, Jalen Hurts wins this one through the air. Like, I know there was a lot of squeaky wheel gets the grease here between Smith and Brown. And they both go for over 100 yards and a score in this one. I don't think that's a coincidence at all. So, but the fact that Philly can win on the ground and win through the air makes them probably one of the most dangerous teams in the NFL entering the playoffs. So, I know that they could fall flat at any point, but they have multiple ways that they could win games as well.
All right. We can move on to the next matchup here. The Buccaneers at the Chargers. I almost agreed with you that with the Chargers, but I decided to go Tampa Bay this time, and Tampa Bay won 40-17. You stayed with the Chargers. I know you love Harbaugh and Herbert. All the H's there with the Chargers. It was competitive first half, and then Baker Mayfield turned it up in the second half and pulled away in this one. And Bucky Irving and Rashad White both had good weeks for the running back position. Mike Evans, huge week, 159 yards on 9 receptions, and he had 2 touchdowns. He's on his way over the last 3 weeks. He just has to average 83 yards in over each game to get his 1,000-yard receiving title again. He'll keep it going. Jalen
Hall of
McMillan.
Famer.
Yep, Jalen McMillan having a good game as well, emerging as a number 2 option in the passing game for this Bucks team. And of course, Chase McLaughlin having himself a game. 16 real NFL points, and 4 field goals made, 4 extra points made. So he put up big numbers for you guys if you played him. On the other side here, the Chargers, no run game without J.K. Dobbins. Their top 3 guys on the receiving charts here all had 5 receptions, about 50-ish yards. 2 of them had a touchdown, 1 of them didn't. So Ladd McConkey, Quentin Johnston got their lone touchdowns. This offense just looks pitiful whenever it's not balanced and whenever they don't have their lead runner.
Which makes me think that they're going to be going early and often at running back in the offseason between free agency and the draft. But the Chargers are in trouble right now. They're really missing J.K. Dobbins, which he's eligible to return in week 17. I don't know if he will. If he does return, they do have a shot to get a playoff win. But if he doesn't, then they have no shot at a playoff win. As McMillan gets hot and stays hot, it's time to start fading Cade Otton. He's fallen out of favor with this offense. I don't think he's a startable piece in the fantasy playoffs. If you're one of the final 4 teams in most leagues right now, shouldn't be starting Cade Otton. Yeah, Bucky Irving surprisingly plays and leads the backfield with 117 yards. Like, that's a little surprising to me. But Chargers defense, not really sure what happened in this matchup, but they gave up 40 points. A 40 burger is not good, especially to Baker.
Luckily for me, I broke my afternoon streak because I was doing terrible in the afternoon games, and now it looks pretty good. Good for Baker. I think the Bucks probably take the NFC South, although if Penix just plays out of his mind, the Falcons could steal it at the end too. So we'll keep an eye on that going forward. But we got 3 matchups left. Let's move on to Green Bay at Seattle. We both went Green Bay. Green Bay, in fact, won 30-13. This was the best that Jordan Love has looked all season, in my opinion. He looked a lot more comfortable. Looked like his knee is feeling the best that it's been. No receiver really dominated the target share. Dobbs got 2 touchdowns on just 40 yards and 3 catches. So marginal lead there. We just don't know who it's going to be week by week. It's all a gamble for them. But this mostly went through Josh Jacobs. He had 26 rushes, 94 yards, and a touchdown. He did have a fumble loss, but that doesn't seem to upset them at all. On Seattle's side, Kenneth Walker was out again. They ran with Charbonnet, but only 8 rushes. I think they abandoned the run game too soon. He did get 54 yards and a touchdown, so it seemed like it was effective. I wish they'd kept running with him. Geno Smith was okay, but had an interception, which led to an injury, which led to Sam Howell coming out. Sam Howell looked not good at all. 5 for 14 with an interception himself. This was a Jackson Smith and Jigba game for Seattle. 10 catches, 83 yards. Not much else going for Seattle. This was all Green Bay in this one.
Yeah, and I think I saw enough of Howell. Like, I know I've been pounding the table for Howell, but I just don't see it right now. And hopefully Gino will be able to return this upcoming week. But Metcalf is not as focused on this offense right now. And I'm wondering if that is kind of what opens up the gates to his exit this offseason via trade.
Well, the reason why he didn't go in the first round in his draft class is because of maturity issues, and he's definitely showcasing it over the past couple seasons.
Yeah, I mean, they just extended him, but I could see them trading him and trying to get assets for him, especially with JSN emerging. So it makes a lot of sense on a lot of different levels.
All right, we've got 2 matchups left. We've got the Bears at Minnesota. We both picked Minnesota. We both were correct. They won 30-12. Minnesota just looked like the better team throughout the entire game. Both teams had very porous offensive lines, so the quarterbacks kept getting hit. But Sam Darnold kind of played tougher, in my opinion, and he led his team to victory here. Aaron Jones had 86 yards and a touchdown. Cam Akers stole a touchdown when everyone needed Aaron Jones to get a second one. But Cam Akers actually had some good moments, although didn't average a very good number of 2.4 per carry. Justin Jefferson had a mildly successful night. He had an early touchdown, had several drops in this game, but still had a line for 7 catches, 73 yards, and a touchdown. Jordan Addison almost had a bigger night himself, but managed 7 catches for 63 yards. Hawkinson looks like he's closer to normal, so maybe the 3 of these guys will get going a little more going forward. Will Reichard had a good fantasy week, so good week for fantasy kickers. Minnesota's defense was good, so good week for Minnesota's defense. Caleb Williams looked pretty bad in this one. Can't blame it all on him. That offensive line did him no favors. Swift had an okay week. Keenan Allen had a very crucial sideline catch, and he had a touchdown as well. DJ Moore was pretty quiet in this matchup, although he caught all 8 of his targets. Rome Odunze was quiet, and Cole Kmet just had the 1 catch. So Bears offense is spiraling out of control. It's gotten really bad. I'm wondering what the future is like for them, but I know their interim head coach is definitely not the guy because he can't even get the offense moving.
Yeah, I mean, that's very clear. And you know how I always feel about the interim guys. So I'm glad this one isn't even a question going forward. But Justin Jefferson could have had a much bigger game than his 7 for 73 and a touchdown because he had a few big drops. But I think there's better days ahead for him. But yeah, Darnold does just enough to squeak this one out. Just enough. But it's a divisional matchup. Bears defense is still pretty decent, so I'm not that down on Darnold right now.
All right, let's move on to the final game of the week, and that was Atlanta at Las Vegas. And this was just a miserable game all around. Both quarterbacks, Cousins and Ritter, looked terrible. Ritter almost looked like a sleeper agent that the Falcons snuck onto the Raiders to just give the game away. But Cousins only had 17 passing attempts, and every time he was out there, he looked like a complete liability. They tried to protect the whole team from Kirk Cousins by running the ball 34 times between Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier. It was kind of working. Drake London's the only receiving option that actually did something, and he had only 3 catches for 53 yards and a touchdown. On the other side, Desmond Ritter threw 39 times, which is a stat that should never happen. Looked terrible the entire time. The running back, Sincere McCormick, we talked about at the beginning of the episode, got hurt. They couldn't really get anything going between Alexander Madison or Amir Abdullah on the ground. Jacoby Myers at the end of the game finally got some stats. Amir Abdullah got a touchdown in this game, and he got 7 catches. Brock Bowers was not able to get on the same page with Desmond Ritter, who either hit it at his feet or threw it too high in the air for a hospital pass. I thought Bowers was going to get murdered at some point with some of the passing, but Raiders looked really bad, and despite that, they almost had a chance at the end of the game to win it. So
yeah. So why was Ritter able to do some positive things late that he wasn't able to do early? Like, I don't know what clicked for him towards the end, but man, why weren't you trying those throws before?
I don't know, because the entire first half he never threw a pass to a wide receiver, from what I remember. I think it was only tight ends and running backs.
Yeah, I don't know why. I think he was scared. But Drake London's score saved his day for him. But Atlanta's offense, outside of Kirk Cousins here, feels like it should be better with all these first-round picks. And it's not, and I'm hoping Penix comes in and it all fixes and it's all glazed over. But I told you, if he's mid still, they're going to have a lot of questions this offseason on London, Pitts, Bijan, etc. Like, what had they spent all this capital on?
I still like the weapons. I like Pitts. I don't think Pitts works in this offense. I think he needs to be considered a wide receiver, and they need to just use that going forward.
Well, then he's not even rosterable in fantasy because he's the 15th tight end, and you might as well just start someone else and can score you 6.5 points a game.
I think it's a usage thing for him too, but he should always have been a wide receiver and not been a tight end. I think they've tried to make him bulk up to actually play the tight end position, and that's made him slower and sloppier, in my opinion.
Yeah, I just don't think he would have been valuable to the fantasy community as a wide receiver. I think what made him valuable was he was a tight end.
Sure, that's what made him ultra valuable, but
yeah,
if he stayed the skinny rookie that he was when he joined the league and set a record of most receiving yards for a rookie tight end with over 1,000, then he would have been a great wide receiver if he just kept doing that.
Potentially. I think that was our last game, though.
Yep, I picked Atlanta. You picked Las Vegas. It was a close one, but Atlanta sucked a little bit less. Is basically how I look at it.
Agreed.
So, commanding lead for me this week. I know you like to bask in it whenever you have a better week than me. So I had to take a little bit of solace here.
So, Alex, just a quick update before you close us out here. I'm pulling up the standings here for the Never Too Early Fantasy Football League here. And currently in first place is your weekly ones at 145. My weekly ones are at 143 in second place. Then your 9-3, then your 5-17, then my 5-17, and then my 9-3 picks.
My 9-3 are about to take a hit because of the end of the year is not going to shape out like the predictions.
No, and I think that's valuable for us to know that for going forward. Like, there's going to be a little wonkiness always towards the end of the year. Different quarterbacks in, different this, different that. We might change our predictions next year.
Yeah, because I did look at them before I made these last ones, and I'm like, these look like they're gonna be. So my 9-3 has run its course on accuracy at this point, just because so much has changed since the off season.
Oh, it was in first for the longest time.
I know, yeah. All right. Well, I think that does it for this episode of the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast. Thank you for downloading and listening to this episode, and please don't forget to like and subscribe. Please leave us a comment and share the show. Every little bit helps.
You can find us on all podcasting apps by searching N2E Fantasy and with our handle at N2E Fantasy on all social media platforms. Please join our community and give us a follow. Until next time, take care of yourselves and remember, it's truly never too early for fantasy football. Thank you again.
Bye, everybody.